What if Elizabeth Warren was elected president in 2020? What if Elizabeth Warren had been elected president in 2020? The idea sparks curiosity, debate, and imagination. A presidency filled with ambitious reforms, fierce political battles, and decisions that could have reshaped America looms vividly in our minds. As a candidate, Warren was a force of nature, bold, energetic, and unrelenting in her pursuit of economic fairness and systemic change. But in the alternate history where she sat behind the resolute desk, what kind of leader would she have become? Let's dive into this dramatic what-if scenario. It's January 20th, 2021, and Elizabeth Warren stands on the steps of the U.S. Capitol. She takes the oath of office, hand on the Bible, under a cloudy winter sky. The air is heavy with anticipation. The nation faces a devastating pandemic, economic hardship, and deep political polarization. In this alternate narrative, Warren defeated Donald Trump with a campaign centered on her mantra, "I've got a plan for that." Her promises of progressive change propelled her to victory, energizing young voters, minorities, and middle-class families desperate for economic justice. Now, as she begins her tenure, the weight of fulfilling those promises weighs heavily on her shoulders. Warren's campaign offered detailed plans for everything: student debt forgiveness, a wealth tax, breaking up big tech, universal childcare, and bold climate action. But how much of that agenda could she realistically push through an ideologically divided Congress? Her presidency would not begin with the luxury of bipartisan goodwill. It would start in the trenches of political warfare. The first 100 days of the Warren administration would be decisive. With the COVID-19 crisis still raging, Warren's immediate priority would be the pandemic. She would unveil a sweeping, science-driven response plan built on expanding vaccine infrastructure, issuing mask mandates, and providing financial relief for working families and small businesses. Witnessing Warren's characteristic drive, many would expect this to be an era of transformation. But even this initial phase would come with battles. As president, Warren invokes her executive authority to cancel a substantial portion of student debt, a cornerstone of her campaign. Millions of borrowers would celebrate as their financial burdens lift overnight. Simultaneously, her administration pushes Congress to pass a pandemic stimulus package with expanded unemployment benefits and protections for renters, alongside funding for healthcare institutions grappling with the virus. While this bold start excites progressives, resistance is instant. Republicans accuse her of implementing reckless spending and overstepping executive power. Moderate Democrats raise concerns that her ambitious agenda may alienate swing voters. And on Wall Street, the alarm bells are ringing. Warren has made it clear that billionaires and powerful corporations will face stricter regulations under her watch. At the heart of Warren's presidency is her landmark proposal, a wealth tax. Targeting individuals worth more than $50 million, it promises to generate revenue to fund universal childcare, student loan forgiveness, and affordable housing. To her supporters, it's a long overdue correction to America's vast income inequality. To her critics, it's a dangerous experiment that risks economic instability. Imagine the fiery debates in Congress as Warren fights for this policy. While progressive Democrats rally behind her, conservative lawmakers and lobbyists mount an all-out defense of the nation's wealthiest. Cable news becomes a battlefield, with pundits debating whether the wealth tax would truly create opportunity or encourage capital flight. Beyond Congress, the response from Wall Street is swift and hostile. Bank CEOs and tech moguls launch a media campaign predicting job losses and reduced innovation. The stock market reacts with volatility. Despite the chaos, Warren remains steadfast, defending her economic patriotism as a way to restore fairness for working families. Whether the tax passes or not, the battle over the wealth tax becomes a hallmark of her presidency. One of Warren's most defining roles as a senator was taking on Wall Street. As president, this fight only intensifies. Her administration pushes for reforms aimed at breaking up monopolies in big tech, reducing predatory practices in the banking sector, and curbing corporate influence in politics. These reforms reflect her belief that unchecked corporate power poses a fundamental threat to democracy. However, implementing these reforms comes with severe backlash. Tech giants lobby aggressively against antitrust measures, while banking institutions warn of economic fallout. As Warren doubles down on regulatory oversight, companies threaten to relocate overseas, causing anxiety in the stock market and among business leaders. Will the public stand by her during this financial turbulence, or will her perceived anti-business policies turn moderates against her? Climate change is another key battleground. Warren's presidency accelerates America's transition to clean energy, starting with a comprehensive infrastructure bill to fund renewable energy projects, modernize transportation, and create green jobs. Positioning herself as a global leader in climate cooperation, Warren re-enters the Paris Climate Agreement on day one and commits the U.S. to bold emission reduction targets. Yet this climate ambition faces domestic hurdles. Fossil fuel industries push back, and conservative states rally against federal overreach. Warren must balance creating change with ensuring workers displaced by the move to clean energy aren't left behind. Her Green New Deal-inspired policies spark heated debates about the cost of saving the planet and whether the timeline for action is realistic. In this alternate history, Warren's tenure is defined in part by how she handles the ongoing COVID-19 crisis. Drawing from her organizational background and meticulous planning skills, her administration launches a robust national testing and vaccination effort coordinated with state governments. She appoints top scientific experts to lead the messaging, replacing confusion with clarity. While these efforts bring results, Warren faces opposition from states resistant to federal mandates. Political analysts speculate that, despite her competence, she inherits distrust sown by Trump-era policies. The battle for public compliance, masks, social distancing, and vaccines frustrates her team, but her administration makes significant progress. While Warren's domestic agenda dominates headlines, her foreign policy reflects a progressive and diplomatic ethos. Determined to repair alliances damaged in the Trump years, she focuses on rebuilding trust with NATO partners and reinvigorating global cooperation. Her administration takes a firm stand against authoritarian regimes, signaling to China, Russia, and North Korea that America values democracy and human rights. Yet, Warren's reluctance to engage in prolonged military interventions draws criticism. Democrats concerned about national security push for a more aggressive stance in hotspots like Afghanistan and Eastern Europe. Meanwhile, isolationists on the right accuse her of prioritizing global issues over domestic concerns. Balancing international leadership with her anti-interventionist principles becomes a tightrope act. The reality of governing under a deeply divided Congress haunts Warren's presidency. Though Democrats control the House, the Senate is razor-thin, perhaps even leaning Republican. This means that every piece of legislation she proposes faces the likelihood of gridlock. The Republican minority, emboldened by their base and armed with procedural tools like the filibuster, blocks many of Warren's key proposals. Even her own party isn't immune to division. Moderate Democrats balk at her progressive agenda on issues like Medicare for All and the Green New Deal, forcing Warren to compromise on key initiatives. While she achieves some legislative victories, the dream of transformative change teeters on the edge of possibility. As the months pass, the public's opinion of Warren's presidency begins to crystallize. To her ardent supporters, she is a fierce reformer, unafraid to challenge entrenched power and fight for working families. To her critics, she is polarizing, overly ambitious, and detached from mainstream America. Her presidency sparks culture wars. Is she fighting for equity or pushing socialism? Is she protecting democracy or undermining economic growth? Throughout her tenure, Warren's administration walks a fine line. Each policy win emboldens her base, but further galvanizes her opponents. The nation's political discourse becomes even more charged, raising the question: can any president truly unite such a divided country? By the end of her first term, Warren's presidency leaves a complex legacy. Some of her boldest ambitions, such as the wealth tax and Medicare for All, face insurmountable resistance. Yet other breakthroughs, like student debt relief, climate investments, and government accountability measures, cement her reputation as a champion of progressive values. Whether she runs for a second term remains uncertain in this vision of history. Despite significant achievements, Warren's polarizing policies continue to divide the nation. Political analysts ponder. Would she have been better served by a more incremental approach? Or was her bold vision exactly what the country needed? The story of Elizabeth Warren's presidency is one of ambition, resistance, and unrelenting tenacity. As an academic turned politician, Warren would bring intellectual rigor and moral conviction to the Oval Office. But in the deeply fractured landscape of modern American politics, even the most transformative leaders face immense obstacles. This alternate history is a thought experiment, a chance to examine the promises and pitfalls of progressive leadership. As we imagine what America would look like under President Warren, the question lingers. Would her administration unify the nation around a shared vision of progress, or would it deepen the divides already plaguing us? The debate doesn't end here, it's only beginning. What do you think? Would Elizabeth Warren's presidency have been a turning point for America or a cautionary tale? Share your perspectives and spark the discussion. Let's explore the possibilities of what could have been. Like and subscribe for more from History Twist, and don't forget to request your own what-ifs.